Chipotle. Why is it $23.92 for one burrito?
Cava costs $16 for a bowl.
Has Chipotle lost its mind? We got 2 bowls and 2 drinks. And granted, we did get double meat, but we didn't get chips, we didn't get guac. $52.64 for 2 bowls and 2 drinks at Chipotle. This used to be like $11 for a burrito bowl. I don't know what they're thinking, but am I crazy here that $52 for 2 bowls and 2 drinks is nuts?
3 of the biggest fast casual brands just reported the worst earnings in their history. Chipotle's stock has been cut in half. Cava is down nearly 60%. Sweetgreen is in free fall. And they're all blaming the same group of people. You. These aren't struggling startups. These are the companies that literally invented the fast casual bowl and turned it into a cultural phenomenon. Lines around the block, Instagram posts, an entire generation's lunch ritual. And now, it's all falling apart. The fast casual boom is officially over, and the reason why should terrify you. See, for years these brands were supposed to be recession-proof. While McDonald's and Burger King fought over dollar menus, Chipotle was charging $12 for a burrito, and people gladly paid it. The pitch was simple: healthier ingredients, better quality, worth the premium. Fast casual was the smart choice, the adult choice, and it worked until it didn't. Because something shifted in the last year. Traffic is down, sales are declining, and when these CEOs jump on earnings calls, they're all saying the exact same thing. Young customers aren't coming anymore. The 25 to 35-year-old demographic that built these brands into empires, they've stopped showing up. And when they do come in, they're spending less. Way less. Chipotle's CEO stood in front of investors and admitted their core customer base is pulling back. Cava's CEO said the 25 to 35 age group is under the most pressure. Sweetgreen reported that sales from young customers dropped 15% in a single quarter. 15%! That's not a dip, that's a collapse. Now here's where this gets really interesting. These aren't McDonald's customers we're talking about. Fast casual brands don't rely on low-income consumers the way traditional fast food does. Chipotle said 40% of their customers make over $100,000 a year. Let that sink in. These are higher-earning millennials and Gen Z, the exact people who were supposed to be insulated from economic problems. The ones with good jobs, decent salaries, discretionary income to burn, and they're tapping out. A study from TD Cowen found that unemployment, lower spending power, and rising costs are crushing younger consumers. And dining out, that's the first thing to go. Not rent, not car payments, not groceries, the $15 to $20 lunch habit, that's what gets cut. And we're watching it happen in real time across every single fast casual brand. Let me show you how bad the prices have gotten. A steak burrito at Chipotle, it was $6.85 just a few years ago. Today, that same burrito costs $24 if you add extra meat. One burrito. Cava bowls are running $16 to $18 depending on your protein. Sweetgreen salads range from $14 to $20. $20 for a salad. That you eat at your desk, that doesn't even fill you up. Chipotle went from food with integrity to integrity sold separately. People are noticing. There are viral videos of customers recording their Chipotle orders, shocked at the total. One guy got a single burrito with extra meat and paid $23. He looked at the camera and said, "The amount of meat this should have had, but you guys give us so little we have to ask for extra." Another person showed their Cava bowl, $17, looking at the portion size like they'd been scammed. This isn't sustainable, and the companies know it. But here's the contradiction that makes zero sense. Despite traffic slowing down, despite customers openly complaining about prices, despite every metric screaming that people can't afford this anymore, none of these brands are offering real discounts, no value menus, no meaningful promotions. They're just holding the line on pricing and hoping it works out. Why? Because fast casual has spent years trying to separate themselves from actual fast food. They don't want to be seen as cheap. They don't want to get dragged into the value wars that McDonald's and Wendy's are fighting. They've positioned themselves as premium, and admitting that people can't afford premium would destroy the entire brand identity they've built. So instead, they're watching their customer base evaporate while refusing to adjust. It's brand suicide in slow motion. They're not losing customers. They're pricing out an entire generation. But it gets worse. The financial situations across these 3 companies are wildly different. Chipotle is still massive. They're pulling in billions in revenue every quarter. Nearly 4,000 locations, they'll survive this. Cava is smaller, a few hundred locations, but they were on a rocket ship growth trajectory until this year. That stalled out completely. But Sweetgreen? Sweetgreen is in serious trouble. They've been around since 2007, 18 years, and they're still not profitable. In fact, they're losing more money this year than last year. Investors are panicking because when Sweetgreen went public in 2021, they promised profitability by 2024. That deadline came and went. No profitability. Just bigger losses. And here's the part nobody's talking about. Most of Sweetgreen's problem comes down to executive compensation. Their general and administrative costs are through the roof because they're paying their leadership teams. Like they're running a profitable empire when they can't even break even on a salad. Sweetgreen's average customer transaction is $18. Their average employee makes $15 an hour. So their own workers can't afford to eat one meal at the restaurant they work at. That's not a business model. That's a dystopia. But let's talk about what these companies are actually saying on their earnings calls, because this is where you see the panic setting in. Chipotle warned investors that they expect same-store sales to decline for the full year of 2025. Same-store sales is one of the most critical metrics for restaurant chains. It tracks revenue at locations that have been open at least a year. Investors want that number going up every quarter. When it goes down, especially for a full year, that's a red flag that the entire business model is breaking. Chipotle also specifically called out the 25 to 34 age group, saying they're dining out less and eating at home instead. That's a massive problem when that demographic is your bread and butter. And here's the part that should make you furious. While Chipotle executives tell investors that young people just need to adjust their perception of pricing, their CEO took home over $17 million in compensation last year. Let me say that again. The guy telling you that a $24 burrito is reasonable made $17 million. While you're cutting back on lunch to afford rent. Sweetgreen reported a nearly 10% decline in same-store sales in the third quarter compared to last year. Their CFO said on the call that the 25 to 35-year-old consumer is the most under pressure, and they make up 30% of Sweetgreen's customer base. Sales from that group dropped roughly 15%. For a company that's already unprofitable, losing 15% of sales from your core demographic is catastrophic. Cava's CEO tried to push back on the narrative that they're overpriced. He said, you can get a chicken bowl at Cava with all the toppings, 3 spreads, greens, and grains for $10.65, or up to $13 in New York City. So it's not a $20 lunch. Except that's not the full story, because most people aren't ordering the cheapest option. They're adding premium proteins, extra toppings, a drink, maybe a side. And suddenly that $10 bowl becomes $17. The starting price might be reasonable, but the actual transaction price is where customers feel the pain. And here's what none of these companies want to admit directly. They price themselves into a corner. For years, fast casual relied on steady traffic and constant price increases to drive growth. A little hike here, a little hike there. Customers tolerated it because everything else was getting more expensive too. Rent was exploding, car payments were up, groceries were insane. A $12 to $14 bowl didn't feel outrageous when your entire cost of living was inflating at the same time. But that tolerance has a limit. You can only push prices so far before people break. And we've hit that breaking point. One customer recorded themselves ordering at Chipotle, 1 burrito with extra meat, and said, I'm thinking like $23 for a burrito with the amount of meat it probably should have had in the first place. But you guys give us so little meat, we have to ask for an extra serving. That's the sentiment spreading across social media. People feel ripped off. Another person showed a Cava plate that cost $17 and just stared at the camera. This is $17. That's the whole video. And it went viral because everyone watching felt the same way. And here's where this gets really dark. What makes this moment different is who's pulling back. These brands don't cater to low-income customers. They never did. Their entire customer base skews higher income. College-educated, urban professionals, millennials and Gen Z with decent jobs who could afford to spend $15 on lunch without thinking about it. When even they start cutting back, that's a signal that something much bigger is broken. Think about what life looks like if you're in your mid-20s or early 30s right now. Rent is at record highs. A one-bedroom apartment in any major city is $2,000 minimum, often way more. Student loans came back after the pandemic pause. Insurance costs have gone through the roof. Groceries are still absurdly expensive, even if the government claims inflation has moderated. And wages? Wages aren't keeping up with any of it. When a salad costs the same as your hourly wage, you're not ordering salad anymore. You're getting squeezed from every direction. So when you're trying to figure out where to cut costs, the first thing that goes is the daily $15 to $20 lunch habit. You start meal prepping, you eat at home, You skip Chipotle and make a burrito yourself for $3 in ingredients. That's what's happening across millions of young consumers, and these fast casual brands are bleeding customers because of it. Cava's CEO basically admitted this in a recent interview. He said, "This is a very intense discount and promotional environment, the most intense since the Great Recession. 30% of all restaurant transactions in the last 12 months were tied to a discount or deal. That's recession behavior, not a slowdown, not a soft patch. Recession behavior." Here's the thing. Despite recognizing this, despite seeing the data, these companies still aren't offering significant value menus or discounts. They're trying to thread an impossible needle. Stay premium, keep margins high, but also bring back customers who can't afford premium anymore. It's not working. Now, to be fair, they're trying some things. Chipotle has been leaning harder into their loyalty program, offering rewards for app purchases. They did a Halloween promotion where anyone in costume after 3 p.m. got a $6 entree. They even brought back TikTok challenges, something they haven't done since 2020 when the restaurant industry was in chaos during the pandemic. On the day before Thanksgiving, Chipotle ran a buy one get one free promotion from 4 p.m. to close, specifically targeting young adults reconnecting with friends. For Cyber Weekend, they offered $0 delivery fees through their app. They launched Chipotle U Rivalry Week in college towns. These are engagement tactics. They're trying to keep people in the ecosystem, get them using the app, build loyalty. And loyalty programs do work to a degree. Fast casual now has a 59% loyalty adoption rate, one of the highest across all restaurant segments. 2/3 of consumers say promotions influence their decisions. But loyalty programs don't solve the core problem. If people fundamentally can't afford your product, giving them points for buying it doesn't help. You need to lower the barrier to entry, and that means dropping prices, which they refuse to do. Cava revamped their entire loyalty program in October, introducing a new tiered status system. They're testing different formats to drive digital orders. Sweetgreen took a completely different approach. They launched a macronutrient tracking tool that shows protein, carbs, and fats next to every menu item. They introduced a Power Max protein bowl with 106 grams of protein and increased their chicken and tofu portions by 25%. Wall Street is not impressed with any of this. Analysts are skeptical that these tactics will move the needle. One Bernstein analyst said, "Loyalty programs create community engagement, which helps long-term, but they're not modeling any immediate benefit from Cava's changes." A TD Securities analyst said, "Gen Z is the #1 thing that has changed in recent months. That pressure is deteriorating industry traffic." And then there's Cava launching their own merchandise line. Hoodies, graphic tees, hats, socks. They've got items called Hot Harissa Hat and Extra Pickled Onions Tea. It's branded merch for a restaurant chain. Wall Street thinks this is ridiculous. One analyst said, "This is not a meaningful extension. This is just brand halo. Companies that succeed long-term build culture, but not like this." Translation: selling hoodies won't save your declining sales. Among the three companies, investor sentiment is all over the place. Loop Capital has a buy rating on Chipotle, arguing that the stock sell-off is overblown and the third quarter results don't justify a 50% drop. They think the narrative about losing young customers has some merit but is exaggerated. UBS has a hold rating on Cava. They acknowledge it's still a compelling growth story with differentiated offerings, but they want proof that the company can return to high growth rates in this economic environment. They're waiting to see 2026 performance before committing. Nobody's bullish on Sweetgreen. The company has been around for almost 2 decades and still can't turn a profit. Losses are growing, not shrinking. Investors who bought in during the 2021 IPO are underwater and furious. The bigger picture here is what this says about the economy. Official GDP numbers look fine on paper. The government says we're not in a recession. But consumer behavior tells a completely different story. When higher-income millennials and Gen Z are cutting back on discretionary spending, that's not a blip. That's a fundamental shift. And what's propping up GDP right now? It's not consumer spending from average Americans. It's tech companies dumping billions into AI infrastructure. If that spending disappeared tomorrow, the economy would look a lot more like what most people are actually experiencing. Struggling to afford basics, cutting back everywhere possible, feeling financially squeezed despite having decent jobs. Chipotle, Cava, and Sweetgreen are living in that reality right now. Their customers are experiencing economic pressure that doesn't show up in official statistics. And these brands are paying the price for years of aggressive pricing strategies that assumed customer tolerance was infinite. It wasn't. The fast casual bowl boom defined a generation's eating habits. It was convenient, relatively healthy, customizable, Instagram-worthy. It felt like progress, a smarter way to eat fast, but it was always built on a shaky foundation. The assumption that young professionals would always have enough disposable income to justify $15 to $20 lunches multiple times per week forever. That assumption just collapsed. So here's what's going to happen. One of three things. Either these companies finally launch real value menus and admit they've been gouging customers for years, or they double down, keep prices high, and become luxury brands that only rich people can afford. Or, and this is most likely, they slowly bleed customers until private equity swoops in, guts the companies, and we end up with the same garbage quality we were trying to avoid in the first place. The fast casual dream is dead. The promise was simple: pay a little more, get a lot better. But somewhere along the way, a little more became your entire lunch budget. And a lot better became slightly less disappointing than McDonald's. For everyone who built their daily routine around these places, who thought a $12 bowl was the smart choice, who believed they were supporting better food, you weren't wrong. They were. They took your loyalty and turned it into stock buybacks and executive bonuses. And now they're shocked you're not coming back. The bowl boom is over, and what's replacing it is a generation of young people who've learned the hard way that the premium options they were promised aren't actually accessible. They're pricing themselves out of the future they thought they were building. And for Chipotle, Cava, and Sweetgreen, they're about to find out what happens when an entire demographic decides that eating at home isn't settling, it's survival. Drop a comment if you've quit Chipotle. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.